Hi, Ryan Dotson here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about starting a fire in the wild. And, anytime that you're in a survival situation, I say over and over again, you've got four pillars of survival that you're trying to accomplish. You've got food, water, fire, and shelter. You can argue that fire is the most important. The general rule is that in rough conditions, whether it be wet weather or cold weather, you can only make it 3 hours in the elements without having something to protect you from the elements to help heat your body, and a fire is the best way to do that. Now, fire doesn't just help you keep your body warm. Helps you cook food, helps you purify water, which is also very important. We just talked about that on a different video. Helps you keep away predators and insects. But more important than all of that is it's just a huge morale booster. I mean, if you've been wandering through the woods all day, and at the end of the day you can have a nice fire to sit down next to, even if it's not that cold, it gives you a nice sense of satisfaction that you've been able to accomplish that. And so I really recommend that you find a way to build a fire in any survival situation. Now, you hope that you have several ways with you to help get that fire started. And the initial ignition, the starting of the fire, is always the most difficult part, especially if you're dealing with wet weather or cold weather. Obviously, the easiest options you're going to have are going to be having a lighter or having some matches. Okay, I'm not going to take time on a video to show you how to start a fire with matches or a lighter. That stuff is simple enough, so you can figure that stuff out on your own. The toughest way to start a fire is a friction fire, and you see it on TV all the time. People are constantly focusing on using a bow drill to be able to start a fire. I can tell you, I could do a 30-minute video on how to start a fire with a bow drill. It is very complicated. It's very difficult. You have to have the perfect kind of wood with a perfect density. It's just not worth spending a whole lot of time on that. We're going to focus on a few ways to start a fire that are going to be difficult enough to where you need some guidance, but are going to be doable. So the first one I want to focus on is using a ferro rod, and you're going to see a lot of different versions of this available. Some are bigger, some are smaller. You see people sponsor these, but they all really typically have a striker and a ferro rod or a magnesium rod that you're working with. Now, you can use the blade of a knife, a high carbon steel knife, in place of this striker if you want to, and a lot of times I do. You'll notice when you first get these that they have a dark coating on the outside. You're going to have to scrape through that to be able to get to the inner area where you're actually going to get some sparks. And so when you get this going, you'll notice that it shoots these sparks off there. Those run at about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a really high temperature spark that's going to help you get your fire going quickly. Now, you can gather a tinder bundle and you can get a fire going really easily with this type of a setup. Another option that you might want to consider is I like to carry fire assistance products with me. This is called wetfire. It's just kind of a waxy substance that you use, and costs just a couple of bucks for a bunch of these. But if you scrape a pile of these shavings off here, and this can be soaking wet and will still do a great job. The wind can be 20-30 miles an hour and it'll get the job done. Get a little pile of that going there, and then use our ferro rod. Maybe. There we go. So you can see that lit fairly easily. That's going to stay going for a couple of minutes while you can add any additional tinder or kindling that you want to get your fire going. So having something like that when it's wet outside is really important. And I always carry a ferro rod with me. I probably use this to start fires more than just about anything with the survival challenges that I do. So the other option is to use a lens. This one's seen better days, but I've got a lens on my compass here that I like to take with me. I've had this since I was a teenager, and you have to have perfect conditions to be able to start fire with a lens. It has to be no clouds in the sky. You can't be in a wooded area. You have to be out in the open, and you have to focus it just perfectly on your tinder to be able to get it to light. Now, to help with that, I like to use a homemade product called char cloth. Char cloth is just simply cotton fabric that has had all of the impurities charred out of it. I actually used this Altoid can to make this. You just punch a small hole in it, fill it up with your small squares of cloth, throw it in a fire for about 10 to 20 minutes until it stops smoking, and then you've got all this char cloth. Now this will take a spark off of my ferro rod, but it'll also catch the heat from this lens to be able to get a fire started. And we're going to use that to hopefully get our tinder bundle going here in just a second. So I'm going to move over out into the sunlight and we're going to give that a try and hopefully show you how that works. And we have fire. So that's how you get a fire started, with a little bit of char cloth and a lens. So that gives you two good options when you're in the wild that can help you if you don't have a lighter or matches with you. Go ahead and put this out. I'm Ryan Dotson. I appreciate you watching. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks.